influences on me. Let's see. It's pretty eclectic and broad. I have to say, I started studying North Indian classical music many years ago, and it kind of broke and reformed my mind and my idea of what constitutes music. Particularly is practiced in what I call the Kabuli Gharana. My teacher's from Afghanistan, and the music is practiced by his family, and that school going way, way back to the court of Emperor Akbar. Just was just it was enlightening. It really changed my idea of what music was and could be. So that's had a big influence on me, and a lot of performers in that genre, particularly string players. Sultan Khan, sarangi player. My teacher, Ustad Rafi Akbarzada, who plays rabab, which is almost extinct, the Afghani rabab. In classical music, I was exposed to Niccolo Paganini when I was in my late teens from somebody who said, "Oh, you got to hear this guy," and it made me a bunch of tapes, cassette tapes, and the violin composers going all the way back, starting with Giuseppe Tartini is one of my very favorites, and in the late 19th century, this whole rash of these rock star violinists. When I was in the violin business, I had magazines dating back to the 19th century, chronicling their exploits, and that was so fascinating to me, particularly how they were all expected to improvise, and how improvisation was so central to the craft and composition. And your modern day virtuoso would have been marveled at for their technical virtuosity and laughed out of the recital hall for being unable to improvise and not displaying any original work. You just weren't considered first rate unless you could do those two things. There's a modern composer named Arvo Pärt, P-A with an umlaut, R-T. He, much like Indian classical music, when I heard his work, his later work, there's two periods to his work separated by 10 years he spent in the mountains. He's Estonian, I believe. When I heard his core works, it made me realize I knew nothing, and I needed to pay attention to how this man was able to just lay me emotionally bare with 3 chords. It was beyond minimalist. It's like light through a stained glass window. So he's, I think, important in a fundamental musical way, like Bach was important. I grew up on heavy metal, so it's undeniable influence. I like a lot of music, really across the board. I've recently been getting into a lot of really old, obscure, old-time country performers. There's a preacher from North Georgia named Howard Fenster who wrote a lot of music for banjo and sort of preached over it. I've been listening to a lot of his work lately on these mixed cassettes friends of mine made while he was still alive. It's really, really all over the place. One of my greatest musical influences are really the friends that I've worked with. I've had a lot of compatriots in music that I think are geniuses, in our own time, and not just because I know them. I've just been fortunate enough to know them. So there's folks I've had the luck to play with, like Jill Tracy, Zoe Keating, Nick Pagan, Jarbo. These people that I've worked with that are just, when they're in their element and they're doing what they do and they do so well, I'm just in awe of what they're capable of. And fortunate not only to be alive in that time, but actually share a stage or be in a recording studio with them. I have a hard time playing the same thing twice, really. Yeah, usually once I play something 3 or 4 times, it's pretty painful to me to play. So I don't know that I have a favorite one to return to again and again. I do a variation on Franz Ignaz von Weber's Passacaglia. He was this really sort of unusual violin composer from the Baroque era. He wrote all of these sonatas about barnyard animals that were supposedly really about courtesans in Venice, and he did all these special effects on the violin and wrote pieces like The Battle, where all the gamba players had to loosen their bows and smack them against the instruments to make gunshots. But he did a Passacaglia, which is a Baroque exercise. It's a descending tetrachord that you just touch on again and again and again and again, and you elaborate on it over and over and over again. And it's all about the complexity you can weave out of the simplest of structures. And I use his Passacaglia as a launching point for improvisation. It's a sort of a musical meditation. So if there's anything I return to again and again that's an actual set piece, at least the first 16 bars or so, it would be that Franz Ignaz von Weber's Passacaglia.